the trainings to the webinars you've been doing. It's just phenomenal stuff. So thank you, and thanks for coming on the webinar here.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting us. I really appreciate it. It means a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I don't do a lot of endorsements or whatever, but like with Danny, for me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, there's like a handful of companies and people that we, recommend and do stuff with when they're launching programs or rolling out software and things like that. And yeah, you like stand in an awesome spot, and it really shows in everything you do. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
So I know we've got about 45 minutes for this call, and I've got a group of questions that I've kind of been curating as I've gone through watching all the content and reading everything you've been putting out. And then I also wanted to open it up to the audience to ask questions, anything you want to know from Danny, and then we'll just kind of get into it. It's going to be a little bit of a lightning round power session. It's going to be a windy road. We'll be in marketing 1 second. We'll be in instructional design another second. We'll be all over the place a little bit. But one of the things I really love about your content is you don't just get right into tactics and stuff. You really take a 30,000 foot view, take a step back, and look at the lay of the land. Can you, in kind of a lightning round approach here, can you explain what you mean by this education bubble that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So education is important, right? Education is what bridges the gap between what we can dream of but not do and what we're actually capable of. So education is a key transformative experience for us all to go through in a lot of the different ways, shapes, and forms in our lives. Now, the traditional source that you go to for education, which is formal education, formal schooling, universities, colleges, trade schools, etc., they're just not cutting it. The cost is going up very, very quickly. It's increased over 1,200% in the last 30 years. The value is dropping precipitously for a variety of factors. And I've written about this quite a lot in my book. But when cost is going up very quickly, value is dropping very quickly, that's a bubble. And bubbles always pop. And the direction in which we're going is, some education people will continue to get in formal institutions. But more and more, the education we need is tight, focused on a specific learning outcome and objective that we want to have. And that's not the best place for us to go get it. And so a lot of the money that is being spent on education is going to shift in the direction of independent course creators over the coming years and decades in the grander scheme of things. It's a huge opportunity. People don't realize the scale of what we're talking about. When I ask people, how big do you think the online courses industry is? They'll guess, when they're being generous, they'll guess $1 billion. It was $105 billion in 2015. It's projected to grow to $241 billion in 2022. That's 5 years from now, 7 years from, 2 years ago. And that's huge. And there's just a lot of opportunity for people who are looking to create something that creates a real transformation on a tight focused topic because of all these factors.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So there's kind of like two narratives going there. One is like the value or the current state of education as a learner, or as a student, but then also as the teacher or the education entrepreneur, or that, entrepreneur that's looking to get a bunch of teachers together around a certain problem or opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the, just zooming in a little bit and thinking about what makes you and your methods unique, one of the things that has stood out with me over the past couple of years with seeing what you do and how Course Builders Laboratory works is the focus on the pilot. So now we're talking about the world of the teacher. Why? I understand, I guess real briefly explain what a pilot is, and then how did you realize that was so important?
So a pilot, we're talking about a pilot course, a pilot program, not a pilot like in an airplane. A pilot is the first minimum viable version. It's your first attempt that you can get off the ground really quickly, rough around the edges, not designed to be scalable or permanent at all. But you deploy it quickly, you work with students closely, typically in a higher touch context, although not necessarily, to validate key assumptions about the course you ultimately want to create. And those can be assumptions around your ability to deliver the transformation, the outcome, your assumptions around what it will take to do so, your assumptions around people's interest in the subject matter and willingness to pay to learn it, getting it off the ground quickly to validate that you're on the right track, and earn money in the process, because that's an important part of the validation. I kind of stumbled onto it. It's not like it's a new idea. This is what Silicon Valley has been preaching for decades now. And it's what smart entrepreneurs have always done. You validate that there's an opportunity before you invest a lot of time and resources. But my backstory is that, I started my business doing exactly what I tell my students not to do. I built a giant course that taught everything that I thought people needed but hadn't validated that they wanted. And it didn't do very well at all. And so I kind of, I was like, all right, fine. So I shifted my attention to other things. And I stumbled onto various strategies that were working very well. And people started coming to me and saying, can you teach me how to do this? And my response, largely because of my experience with that big course, was no, I'm not going to build another course.
Right.
They kept on asking. And so when the demand really became overwhelming, I just said, you know what? All right, I'm going to do a pilot class. I'm going to do the minimum viable prep that I can. I'll fill an initial class, initial group of people into the program, and then I'll deliver it. And this was not intended to be marketing wizardry. This was just me hedging my bets, because I figured there's a good chance that nobody signs up, or 2 people sign up. People think, by the way, the worst thing that can happen is that nobody buys your course. The worst thing that can happen is that one person buys your course, because then you're on the hook to
yeah.
So in that scenario, I could just refund them and that would be that. But, very surprisingly to me, not only did it do well, I sold out so quickly that I had set a capacity limit. So I opened the doors, it filled, I closed it. All of that happened in like 24 hours. And it was a holiday weekend. I have a history of, I'm just not aware of all the various calendar stuff because I work from home and I'm not tuned in. So I have a history of launching stuff on holidays. And so by the time people got back from the holiday weekend and saw that it had opened and closed, they missed it, they were all very upset. So it was a whole thing, and I ended up having to reopen it and letting more people in, which is, a good problem to have, but still a problem. And so that was, a great experience. I delivered the program, and it was about a certain marketing method for audience building. And I had a lot of students go through it. They saw a lot of success, so they started to grow their audiences. They were starting to get results. And I started to get questions from a lot of these students, which they came in different permutations, but basically between the lines, they were all asking, now that I know how to do this one marketing thing, does that mean I know everything I need to know to grow my business? And my response was like, well, no, of course not. Why would you think that? It's a whole big thing. And, the questions kept coming. So finally I was, kind of the same approach. I didn't think it would do very well. So I just got people together on a webinar. I was like, look, I'm just going to walk you through my whole process, all the steps that I would think you should go through. And if you're interested, I'm going to start a coaching group. So you can sign up, apply, and if you're interested, then we'll go ahead. It was $6,000. That was not cheap. I did a webinar. I just presented. I was like, if nobody goes for it, then I haven't lost anything. 9 people signed up. I interviewed them all. I turned 2 of them down. I was like, I don't think this is a good fit. I made $42,000 in a weekend. This was the first big payday that I had in my online business journey. This was in 2012. 12? Yes, 2012. And I was like, is this really happening? Like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
And I worked with people and a few months later I did again. And I brought more people in, and that experience informed the creation of a program that I later launched that was very successful. And it was only after doing this a couple of times, first launching a pilot, having great results with it, learning from it, turning it into a full course, that I started realizing, maybe there's something here. And I started digging deeper into why does this work and why is it so effective. And there's a lot of behavioral science research supporting why this is such an effective strategy. But what really kind of pulled it together is I started getting these questions around, Hey, I've taken your course and I got great results, and I've taken other people's courses and I haven't. Can you teach me how to build and sell courses like yours? And when I started to see enough demand, I started digging into it, and one thing led to another, and here we are, Course Builders Laboratory, Teach and Grow Rich, a whole organization supporting it. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway there is just the importance of the feedback loop. Like if you don't have a feedback loop, you're flying blind, and you might be very inefficient. Well, one of those issues related to either the pilot or the next phase after the pilot that people deal with is imposter syndrome. You talk about that a little bit. Can you kind of just briefly say what it is and what do you think what's a core strategy to deal with that? And I just want to say that back in my agency days, I've helped out with a lot of launches of various sizes, really big ones, small ones, whatever. And even in myself, I see it happen like clockwork every time. I usually see it in the form of somebody, especially the owner or whoever's behind the course of the membership or whatever it is. They start like sabotaging it, or like all right, the launch day starts moving. Like, where does this come from, and how do people just deal with it head on?
So first of all, what is imposter syndrome? It is, there's like a clinical description. It's like the tendency of high-performing individuals to feel like they haven't earned their success. There's a whole description, but what it comes down to is that voice in the back of your mind that is asking you, are you good enough? And for many of us, the voice is neither quiet nor polite. It doesn't ask, it says, it shouts, you are not good enough. Who are you to be doing this? Why should anyone want to take your course? Why should anyone listen to me? And this is a very, very common thing that a lot of people deal with. And the bad news is that it doesn't go away. I've literally made close to $10 million over the last few years teaching people how to build and sell courses, building and selling my own courses. And every time I come on a call like this to speak, I have butterflies in my stomach because it's like, why would people want to listen to me? And that's okay, right? Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is acting in spite of fear. So the answer is to be courageous. The problem happens when people don't just ignore the voice and act with courage and do what they need to do. They start arguing with the voice, right? Their focus turns away from their student, away from the people they're trying to serve, towards the voice. I see this a lot when people are building courses. They stop focusing on what the student needs. They start focusing on essentially building a case against the voice. This is what leads to a lot of very bloated courses and curriculums where you look at the list and it's like you want to be able to point to it and tell the voice like, look how much I'm covering. It must be good enough. But of course, that's not in service of the student because there's no such thing as neutral content. There's no such thing as stuff that is just nice to have. Everything is either critical and absolutely necessary for your student to achieve the learning objectives and outcomes that you want them to have, or it's detrimental because it's an opportunity for them to be confused and distracted and overwhelmed.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And something else in terms of bloating that you mentioned that I'll just state quickly here is that when you're building your course, you should have a minimum viable scope, which is something that you could explain or help somebody with on a 2-hour plane ride. I think that's a great rubric for like, okay, let's put some bumpers on the lanes here. And that's just such a great method to start with. Now, a lot of people asked me questions before this call that they wanted me to ask you, and we've got some coming in. So I want to go ahead and just kind of jump to some various questions.
Sure.
The first one has to do with somebody who is in the continuing education market. So, there's kind of this market where I'm an expert in something, I sell direct to the consumer. And it's kind of like whether or not the word is good or whatever, but it's kind of like a guru style course. Like I'm one person, I'm an expert, and I'm teaching this skill or this method to somebody. But then there's this world of continuing education, especially when and I've seen this where some of the course projects, just from a business perspective, that I see doing really well right now are mandatory continuing education requirements. And there's education entrepreneurs coming into the space, and they are, they're basically bringing a fresh perspective on e-learning, and they're doing the hard work maybe not even that hard, but just doing the work of getting approved by the board to be able to have their course count against some kind of credit. But I'm just curious from your side, what do you see? What's some success or things that you're seeing in the continuing education markets, just in general, for course creators?
It's an area that I don't know a ton about. We do have students who've been successful getting their courses accredited and all that kind of stuff, but it's not a core focus of what I do. Most of the stuff I teach people how to do tends to be, expert to student directly. But when people ask me this, because I get this question every so often, it's like, will you help me build a course that will be accredited by this body, by that body? And it's, it's always some obscure body I've never heard of, because it's always interesting.
Right.
What I'll always say is that, of course, in designing your course, you want to think about what are the objectives that matter to that body. But beyond that, you're going to have to just reach out to them, build a relationship, build a case for why they should accredit it, why they should make it count. And the first step towards doing that is a course that works. It's having the proof that this actually gets results. It's building a case that this is, a good investment of time and energy for the people going through it. So getting accredited, it's a good thing to if you know this is what you want to do, network with the organization in advance, ask what's involved, know the process, so that if there's stuff you have to prepare or layer in, you can. But most of it's going to come down to building a good course.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Another question I got from somebody in our community had to do with issues around, well, I have a bunch of pricing questions for you, but this is the first one. Somebody has a free course, it's growing awesome, and then they decide to they put a price tag on it, flat line of growth. Mm-hmm. What do you think might trigger that? Like, in terms of, like, for example, one of my first courses was how to build a WordPress website in a weekend. I think at this point on Udemy, I have about 12,000 people in it. If I were to put a price tag on it, first of all, it's like really outdated and old or whatever, but I would imagine the growth would like not be the same. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like that transition to free versus paid, what kind of tools or ideas should people think about in order to, if they want to do that, to think about it intelligently?
So free versus paid serve different purposes, right? Free is, here's a really good analogy, right? You walk down the street, it's a nice, summer day. You pass by an Italian restaurant. It's like a weekend, like street festival or whatever. And you might have a guy standing out there with little like Italian meatballs with toothpicks in them, offering you, hey, do you want to taste? Do you want to try? And you might taste you and say, hey, this is great. I might go into that restaurant at some point. If instead of little meatballs with toothpicks, he was out there standing with a plate of spaghetti trying to hand it to you, you'd be like, dude, like, I'm going to get tomato sauce all over my shirt and I'm not hungry and there's nowhere for me to sit down. Like, he's asking for more of a commitment than you're willing. And that's the key thing. When somebody takes a free course, the bar for what they're going to try is pretty low. It's not hard to get people to try it. If it kind of meets the high level topic, is this more or less what I'm looking for? I'll sign up, I'll take a look. Which is why, by the way, the completion rates on free courses are typically abysmal, because the commitment that people are making is very minimal. On the other hand, it's more of a commitment when people are looking to invest their money, and how much money and what the level of commitment is depends a little bit on the market. But the question that I encourage people to think about, and I get asked this a lot in different forms. Sometimes people will say, I'm looking to create a course in a market that is very saturated. What should I do? Sometimes the issue is that it's saturated with free stuff. That's just one category of saturation, but saturation rather. But either way, we're talking about a saturated market. And I love saturated markets, because saturated markets indicate there's demand. They indicate that there are people who are looking for this solution. Saturated markets also tend to imply a more sophisticated customer base. And that just means you can't just kind of come out, hey, look, I have this benefit. Do you want it? Everyone's offering that benefit. You've got to give a more sophisticated and thought through solution. And what you want to do is look around the landscape and ask yourself, what is missing? If you can point to a competitor that is doing everything perfectly, it's like, the price is right, the content is great, the support is there, everyone is succeeding. then don't create a course. Just send people to your competitor. There's nothing missing in the market there. On the other hand, if you look around and you say, well, there's stuff that I think needs to be taught that is not being taught, or it's being taught, but it's not being taught in the way I think it needs to be taught. Or maybe it's even being taught in the way it needs to be taught, but it's not being supported effectively. For whatever reason, there's a break in the chain and students are not getting the outcomes that they want. In that case, if you feel like you can provide those outcomes, then there's an opportunity, and I think it's incumbent on you to step into the market to create that thing of value and just communicate to your students, here's why what I'm doing is different. Here's why it's special. Gotcha. And by the way, I'll throw another something in there. People often worry that it's hard because the big benefit, I hear this a lot. I spoke with someone earlier today, said this. She's in a market where there's a big benefit that is being offered, and it's become a little bit cliched. This isn't her thing, but let's say it's earn money while you sleep, which tons of people say. And a lot of people make that promise, but they can't deliver it. She actually can. She has a methodology and a process that works. It actually is doable. But she's saying if I make that my promise, people aren't going to believe me. So here's an interesting thing that I learned from a class that Aaron Sorkin delivered on Masterclass. He's talking about possible improbabilities versus impossible probabilities. So the idea that something that seems plausible except for the fact that there's an alien in it, we'll accept that in a screenplay. Something that is totally possible but just very improbable, like the guy in 24 having 490 things happen to him in the same 24 hours, it kind of raises an eyebrow. It's like, really? and so we're skeptical of these improbabilities, but there's a get out of jail free card, which is if you acknowledge the improbability. So if the guy in 24 is like, there's a dialogue scene, he's like, how is it possible that all of this is happening to me in one day? Couldn't any of this have happened tomorrow? Yeah. If he just says that, then the audience okay, they understand that this is improbable. We give it a pass. And so it can be as simple as acknowledging that same, clichédness in your promise. If that promise were hypothetically make money while you sleep, maybe you change the headline, the promise, to make money while you sleep, in brackets, yes, really. Right, so people are like, okay, right, he gets that this is a little cliche. I'm going to lead in and pay attention. And then, of course, you need to spell out why what you're offering here is different from everything that's out there.
That's really good. I love that. That's a pro tip right there. There's a question coming in right now about pricing, and not in regards to tiers, but just rather the price. I know a lot of people struggle with this, and I know you mentioned in your webinar a triangulation concept. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're looking to figure out your price, you want to basically triangulate based on 3 factors. You want to start with the transformation. And of course, this is not the transformation in some abstract or objective sense. It's the transformation in the eyes of the student, from their perspective. What is this transformation worth to them? How important is it? How much do they care about it? That's the first thing you want to look at. And what would they peg that value to? Second, you want to look at the competition, right? Who else is, if they don't go with you and your course, where are they going to go? And that could be other course providers. And often I hear, but nobody else is doing this, or there are no courses about this, which people think means the same thing, which it doesn't, right? But if someone doesn't go with you and your course, they're going to go somewhere to get their problem solved. Are they going to hire a specialist? Are they going to read a bunch of books? Like, what is their alternative? So that's your competitive landscape. And then you look at the positioning that you have relative to that competitive landscape and relative to that transformation. Are you the premium provider? Are you offering a level of support that nobody does? For example, my Course Builders Laboratory training program that teaches people how to build and sell courses is more expensive. It's a bigger investment than most training programs about online marketing. Most online marketing trainings are this iconic $2,000 price point, $1997. And we cost $2,995. Now, why is that? Well, it's because we're a premium provider. We offer a level of support that nobody does, right? We provide a dedicated course building coach to every student in our program. And that allows us to guarantee results that nobody will. We guarantee that you will successfully launch your course, or we give you double your money back, which nobody else will do. So what is what is the value of the transformation? What is the competition? Then how are you positioned against those things?
Gotcha. Could you say just one more time, because I think it's so valuable, how do you, and maybe you'll add some more to it, but how do you become the premium option?
By looking around the landscape and seeing what is missing and saying, I'm going to fulfill this, I'm going to fill that need. And then, of course, validating that you can, doing your pilots and gathering proof. When people say, how should I know that, so you're making me this promise. And a guarantee is a proof element, right? And I'm proving that I believe I can deliver this promise. I'm saying if I don't, I'll give you double your money back. But there are lots of other proof elements. My favorite proof elements is other students, right? At the end of the day, what's more compelling? If I give you a long list of stuff I teach in the course and support infrastructure, I say, look, go here, there's a page. You can see 80 other students just like you and see the successes they had, right? And by the way, anyone who wants to see that, you go to mrse.co/gallery. That's not a hypothetical thing, right? mrse.co/gallery, and you can see examples of what that might look like, but overwhelming proof.
Gotcha. Let's touch on support real quick, and then I want to get into a listener question here. I guess first 30,000 foot view, what's going on with, like, why isn't there more support in online courses and membership sites? And then how do you help people figure out what kind of support makes sense for their business and their course?
I think the reason there isn't an adequate level, I'm going to say, it's inadequate, most of what's out there. The reason there isn't an adequate level of support in most online courses and membership sites, it's kind of an accident of history, right? You had a lot of people kind of come online, discover the opportunity of, how can I make money? How can I build websites that a lot of people visit, and I run ads and all that kind of stuff. And people started saying, hey, that looks cool. Can you teach me how to do it? And that's what turned people who are not educators for the most part onto this idea of maybe I can teach, maybe I can package what I know and share it, and people would be interested in paying for it. And, there's a progression in the richness of media, right? In the early days of the internet, the only media available was text, just because bandwidth wouldn't carry anything else. And so people would write little ebooks and sell them, and they saw something interesting. An ebook is just like a book, a print book, only it's, in a lot of ways, it's better. You can keep it updated all the time. There's hypertext, it's dynamic. That's awesome. There's no degradation of the reading experience. It's if anything, it's improved. Great. Then richer media came along. Started having video, audio. You could do much more interesting things. And people said, what if we do the same thing that we did with text, with books essentially, and we did that with education? What if we took a teacher in a classroom and we recorded it, we put it online, we made it accessible, and whenever people want it, 24/7, just like we did with text. It was very well intentioned, except that there's a difference between information, which is text, and it's not about text, it's about the richness of the media and the experience, and education, which is designed to create a transformation, which is not just about downloading some info, it's about processing it and absorbing it. Information is great for taking people from a place where they don't know what you're talking about to where they do. It's great for giving you a literacy in a topic. Information alone is not enough to create a fluency. That requires education, which involves, yes, more deep explanations and all that, but also time to practice, time to get feedback. All the people who set into this industry to do it, they didn't come from that background, they didn't get it, and they were very enamored with this idea that you can build it once, make money while you sleep, living on a beach in Tahiti, et cetera, et cetera. And also there's a lot of very unrealistic margin expectations. If you're selling a product online, digital good, it's an ebook, and you pay a 50% commission. I think there are issues with that model, but just to illustrate the point, you pay a 50% commission to a referring partner, which feels like a lot. We're the only industry in the world where people think a 50% margin is bad. right? Most businesses, most industries, it's like, there are a lot more costs of time, labor, resources, stuff. And so the margin expectations are unreasonable. I don't make a 50 or 80% margin when someone buys my course, because I'm paying salaries to course creators and instructional designers and coaches and all the stuff that it takes to get my students to the finish line. And that's okay, because I'm building a real business. This is not some money-making scheme. But you've got to remember that people building courses online is a pretty nascent industry, because online is a nascent space. Online didn't exist 20 years ago. Google was invented in 1998. Like, that's not even 20 years. So there's a certain just lack of maturity to the space, and it's kind of growing up fast. It's kind of in its adolescence right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I kind of want to tie where you are right now into a listener question coming from Bonnie about building up a course in the healthcare niche and wanting to also offer one-on-one coaching as a part. So she wants some advice around that, but I thought I'd start by asking you about your journey with Course Builders Laboratory. It's not just you have coaches. So how does someone know when it's time to bring in coaches? And how do you just manage all that? Like, how do you know how many coaches you need, or that's kind of Bonnie's question. And her kind of follow-on question to that is like, how do you market the fact that you have coaches?
That's a lot of questions, but I'll do my best. So the first thing you need to do is make it cost effective to provide coaching, to provide support in whatever format it's going to be. And that's why the piloting process is important, because if you go in basically promising that I will answer every question you have, which, as a teacher should be, maybe that's a little extreme, but that's basically what's incumbent on you to help people get the results they want. So it often will not be cost effective. Right? And definitely won't be scalable. It takes too much time, too much energy. That's okay with your first pilot. You're feeling it out. But if you're keeping track of these questions, of these challenges, you're going to find that they divide into two groups. You've got the questions that, every person is asking a different question that's unique to their situation. And that's where you need to provide support on an ongoing basis. That's where there might be a role for either you to be a coach or for you to hire coaches over time. But then there are the questions that everybody is asking the same question. And that's your cue that you need to just fix your curriculum, fix your content, so that these questions don't come up anymore. So you need to do that first, because otherwise providing coaching just is cost prohibitive. But once you do that, you kind of smooth out your curriculum, so you're only providing the support that is actually necessary. Start by delivering it yourself. Get a sense of, how much time does it actually take on a per student basis? What are those dynamics? And it depends how fast you want to scale, but the easy next step is you hire 1 or 2 people to apprentice under you. You start handing off those student relationships. You do it gradually, but you can't, there's no formula of, one coach can work with X number of students, because it depends on what the intensity of the coaching relationship is. And the more sophisticated and refined your course, the less coaches you will need to provide a meaningful level of coaching support. In terms of how you market it, you just tell people, it's going to be there for you. I tell people explicitly, every student in my program gets a dedicated coach on my team. That's what creates the results that our students look forward to. It's why we're able to guarantee those results.
Gotcha. Very good stuff. Well, in that light of not doing it all alone, or I notice this, sometimes people hang on too long to trying to do everything. It's hard to be a teacher, an entrepreneur, a marketer, instructional designer. In your opinion, or in your experience in seeing what works out there, where do you see a trend as like the first hire for the expert? What is it? Is it a designer? Is it some kind of, is it another coach? Is it an assistant? What is it? Like when people start building a team as online course entrepreneurs? Yeah.
It depends a lot. There isn't a single right answer, because not just every business is different, but every entrepreneur is different. Every course creator is different. So you're going to have different strengths. What typically happens is that you're not going to try to get someone to replace you with the things you're very good at, because that's very hard. You want to find someone who can replace you with the things that maybe you're very bad at, or maybe just you're okay at them, but they take a lot of your time. But the stuff that is typically lower dollar, lower value, so you can bring someone in, at a reasonable rate that can free up a bunch of your time. Um, that's really the key thing. You just want to free up your time to be able to do more of other stuff. And typically what I've found is that, your first few hires are going to be generalists. They're people who are smart and resourceful, can do a little bit of everything, but they're not experts at anything. And because you don't have any particular thing you need so much of that, what course creator has enough design work that they need a full-time designer? Right? You might have like freelancers that help you out, but in terms of full-time hire, it'll often be a generalist.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I want to get into a little bit more about Course Builders Laboratory, and I know we've only got about 5 more minutes here, but I just wanted to say that we are promoting Course Builders Laboratory, and if you buy through our link, we are offering a year of our full suite of course building software products. And then I'm also offering with that 2 one-hour consulting sessions with me, one now and then one in a month, just to kind of sweeten the deal if you end up going through our link. But can you tell us just a little bit more about Course Builders Laboratory and what makes you excited about it, and what people can expect if they join?
Absolutely, and thank you. That's a very generous bonus to encourage people to take the plunge, and I hope a lot of people do. The Course Builders Laboratory is for people who've decided that building and selling an online course is an important part of what they want to accomplish. It's a lengthy, detailed curriculum, but it's very digestible. It's very step-by-step, and it's self-paced, so you progress through it at whatever pace works for you. And you're supported through that whole process by a course building coach on my team. And you get that support through a variety of channels. There's direct email support, there's one-on-one calls, we have office hours calls with coaches almost every day. So there's a lot of opportunities to get the help you need, however works best for you. And you will sign up and you will learn and work through all the steps of going from zero to a successful course, including researching, planning your pilot, doing the minimum viable preparation in order to sell it, and then selling it. Acquiring paying students is a huge part of it. Delivering it, gathering feedback from the experience, learning, pivoting, turning it into a full course, scaling it, the whole 9 yards. It's all in there. And because of the support that we offer, we're able to guarantee results. If you go through the program and lean on your coach, do the work, you will successfully launch your course. And if you don't, we'll give you a course correction plan. And if you follow it and it doesn't work, we'll give you double your money back.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean that high touch support and knowing more than it's just information, and just seeing all the amazing content that you put out there is why we believe so strongly in your work and your company.
Thank you.
We've got just a couple more questions I just wanted to ask real quick, coming in from Bonnie.
Sure.
How long do you work with your coaches for? Are they do they stay with your company, Miracy, or are they around just during the main times there's an active course, or how does that work?
No, my coaches all work for me full time. Yeah. This is what they do, and they're around supporting our students for as long as our students are around. There's no time limit on the support that our students get. It's as long as you're working on courses, even if it's years.
Gotcha. And then last question here, which I think is really cool because it has to do with launches, and you are doing an amazing launch of Course Builders Laboratory, and you're setting a really great example for other course creators to look at and kind of deconstruct and take notes on. But the question is, when you're launching your course, how do you handle customer service, and any words of wisdom, must-dos, things to avoid around launching your course?
I mean, that's an enormous question, but it really comes down to 2 things. First of all, be clear on your targets. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. If you're in a place where 50 students is a big win, don't try to engineer a launch that will get you 200, because it's more than you need. It'll break your back. You want to do only the things that you need to do, and make sure you resource them well enough to do them well. You don't want to take something on that you're not going to be able to do a good job with. So that applies to planning your launch. It applies to resourcing your course. It applies to customer service. We're in a launch. We've got 50,000 people who are in correspondence and exchanging information with us right now to learn about our program. Our average response time to an email is a little more than 3 hours with all of this crazy volume, because we know it's important. And so a lot of my team is dedicating their efforts. This is not their full-time jobs forever, but their full-time jobs have been redirected for these couple of weeks to support all the people who are discovering us for the first time. So it comes down to, if you're going to do something, do what you have to do to be excellent at it.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to thank you, Danny. Thank you for being a leader in this online course building and education entrepreneur community. Really appreciate you stopping by and doing a lightning round of questions with us and just continuing to add value. That's really awesome. And I'd encourage all of you listening to go check out Course Builders Laboratory. And if you're interested in the bonuses we're offering, you can see a page about that at lifterlms.com/CBL-bonuses and check that out. But Danny, I wish you well on finishing out your launch here and this next round of Course Builders Laboratory students. Getting out there. I'm sure there's nothing that makes you more proud and happy than seeing all these courses out in the wild that you've helped encourage and foster with your learners. So I wish you all the best on your next chapter here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your having me on. I appreciate your support, and I want to thank everyone who's been watching this. I appreciate your attention, your energy, your engagement, and your interest in building something that will be transformative to others. So thank you. I really hope we're going to get to work with you through the Course Builders Lab. Here's to your success. Thank you very much.